Airline refuses to let dad board plane with baby. Then he finds a note in his pocket.
But before we start, please make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss an upload from us. Also, leave a like right now.
It was April 2018 when Ruben Swift traveled to Phoenix. He was happier than he had been in months, and he had good reason to be. Ruben had just become a father, but circumstances hadn't been kind to the new dad. On the day he heard the good news, he thought that things were finally looking up, but his happiness would be short-lived. Ruben had been through a long legal battle to get here, but he'd done it. The court had granted him full custody, which meant that he'd be allowed to fetch his newborn baby, Rue Andrea, and take her to his home in Ohio. The joyous new father then left the hospital in Phoenix with his little Rue Andrea, now only a member of this world for a mere 4 days, and headed straight back to the airport to prepare for their flight to her new forever home. Everything was previously discussed and arranged with the airlines. But imagine the horror for the new father when, despite all of this, the ticket officer informed Ruben that none of this really mattered at all. The doctors of the hospital who cared for Rue Andrea had prepared all of the documentation to indicate that she was fit, healthy, and safe to be undertaking a rigorous interstate air trip and everything that goes with it. So how could this be happening now? Dumbfounded, Ruben could only listen as the ticket officer at Frontier Airlines explained why they would not be able to fly home. Turns out, according to the officer, there is a policy at the airline that restricts babies who haven't attained the age of 7 days from participating in any form of air travel, regardless of how short the trip may be. Devastating and missing his family terribly, Ruben wondered how on earth he was going to overcome the obstacle. He started weighing up all his options. I was out of money and the hospital told me that I wouldn't be able to get a birth certificate for 7 days, Ruben explained. I was worried that if security saw me sleeping at the airport with a newborn, they'd take her away from me and charge me with neglect. I was stuck, but the situation was about to get much worse. Ruben didn't have a single family member or friend who lived in Phoenix. This meant that there was a brand new father with a brand new baby girl stranded in a town he didn't know at all and not a single person to turn to. Was this his destiny for the next 3 days to come? Starting to panic at the thought of not being able to give his new little bundle of joy the best possible care, he took control of his emotions and started to think rationally and positively. Then, with all the turmoil going through his head, he suddenly saw a face in his mind. He recalled that when he was at the hospital, he had seen an elderly woman in the maternity ward at Banner University Medical Center, where he met his daughter for the first time. She turned out to be a hospital volunteer, and he saw her caring and caring for Rue Andrea. He had spoken to the woman for a few minutes and got the immediate impression that she was very kind and nurturing. For some reason, he happened to take her number. He'd written it on a piece of paper and put it in his pocket. But he didn't even know if she was going to remember him or his daughter if he called her. Standing with a newborn in his arms, stranded at the airport with no other options, he gathered his thoughts and decided to follow his gut. Pulling the crumpled note out of his pocket, he dialed the number and prayed when it began to ring. "Please answer, please." Everything was riding on that phone call. This is where Joy Ringhofer steps into the picture and the start of a beautiful and heartwarming story unfolds. Even her name is significant. This act of kindness, which began with only 3 days, turned into a lifelong connection and touched the hearts of millions of people around the world. Joy invited Ruben and little Rue Andrea into her home with open arms. She said, "I had such a strong feeling that I needed to do this for him. And I know that he was a very kind and safe man to have in my home, and he's been a perfect gentleman." What started out as an extremely joyous occasion where he was gonna fetch his newborn baby almost turned into a disastrous adventure where Ruben was to be stranded in a strange city with a brand new newborn baby girl. After everything that has happened to him, he's now been taken in by a kind elderly lady and suddenly feels elevated. This kind-hearted angel took care of him and his little baby girl, Rue Andrea. Ruben remarks that when he called her, she said she was going to go home and fetch him and take him home. Ruben still laughed and thought she was going to drive him all the way home to Ohio, but little did he know she was going to take them into her own home and care for them. Ruben remarks that she could have easily said that there was a problem and refused them. Instead, she made them part of her family, and even though they were complete strangers, it was never an issue. Rue Andrea and Ruben flew home, but he made a promise to return to the woman who has become a family, a stranger who has now become like a grandmother who gained a granddaughter. What Ruben learned from this experience is, that in this crazy world there is still compassion. The blessed new father wants to spread his compassion by encouraging others to help those in need. Let's return to a time when we all cared about one another. That's what I'm hoping will happen, he said. What would your immediate reaction be when you see or hear of someone in need of help or just a little human kindness? Would you turn your head and look the other way, pretend you didn't see someone's dilemma? Or will you stretch out your hand and offer some humanity? In the end, would you be able to say like Reuben, "I'm grateful"?